Hey everyone, Mr. Happy here, and in this video, I want to talk about Blue Mage. It's been a while since I've just discussed Blue Mage as a whole, except maybe on State of the Realm. But when the job first released, I said that I needed to give it some time and see what they did with the updates before deciding if the limited job idea would work, or if Blue Mage would work, or I guess them combined would work at all. And at this point, after the release, we've had 3 updates all the way up to level 80, probably have one next expansion to level 90, but I guess my point is that it's been long enough. You know, I feel like I want to revisit the discussion about what works about Blue Mage, what doesn't work about Blue Mage, missed opportunities, things they could do, would do, should do, whatever. You know, I just want to talk about it because it's been a while. So let's do that. So first of all, little history lesson for people who weren't around when the job was initially unveiled. It was actually announced at the North American Fan Festival. I'm not saying anything like that's going to happen this time. I'm just telling you when it released. North American Fan Festival for Shadowbringers. They mentioned it at the end of the opening keynote. The CEO came out dressed as a Blue Mage, and they told us that it was the game's first ever limited job. It was going to be released before Shadowbringers even came out. And then walked off stage, and we had to wait for the live letter the next day to figure out the details. Other than that, it was just speculation and questions for 24 hours. However, when we got the information the next day, it was, I think it's fair to say, not quite what any of us expected. We were told how it wasn't going to be able to do traditional content. It was going to have its own content with the Masked Carnival. It was going to be more solo focused. You were still going to have to go and learn the spells, but essentially we just learned how it was going to work, the whole limited job concept and what that actually meant to the dev team and what it would mean for us as players. So with that information, there was a bit of confusion as to why they were going this route. They did say that it was because they felt they could better achieve the Blue Mage job fantasy that was in line with Final Fantasies, you know, the other Final Fantasy games for Blue Mage. But there was still a bit of confusion because that's never been something that stopped them before with other jobs up to that point, and really with other jobs since. They've just always found a way to make something work as a traditional job in Final Fantasy XIV. So there was a lot of discourse about whether they should have taken this approach and, you know, whether they could even support this kind of idea or anything in that capacity. Then we got the job in patch 4.55, and the discourse continued. You know, a lot of people thought it was a complete waste of time that they did this to it. Some of us, myself included, enjoyed it in its current form. You know, we liked the spell hunt, which again felt very traditional, something very different. Doing coils with all Blue Mages was a lot of fun. The trials, the carnival, the puzzle solving with that. The initial update, you either loved it or hated it, but even the people who loved it, we were kind of like, you know, I'm curious to see what they'll do with it in the future. Now that's where the problem set in, because we got the level 60 update, and yeah, we got new spells, we got a few new carnival missions, we got the Alexander raids, and, you know, a raid mount, which was definitely a big incentivization for me personally. But I guess as a whole, though, they didn't really do a whole lot new. You know, they didn't really show us what this whole limited job concept was really going to achieve. Then the level 70 update came, and it was just one new carnival, and, you know, you could do the raids now, but, you know, there was no new mount. And now the level 81, no new mount, and one new carnival, and a few new spells, and some job quests. Like, the job quests are at least interesting, but the big thing that I'm getting out of all of these updates is that it really feels like they phoned it home and just are updating it because it is something they can update. It's something they can look to update. It doesn't feel like something they necessarily want to continue to pursue. And as a player, you tend to feel that and start to really think of the other possibilities of what they could have done, what they could still do, all that stuff like I mentioned before. So first and foremost, since I'm revisiting some of the same things that I touched on in my original video, do I think the limited job idea has worked in Final Fantasy XIV? I think their initial unveiling of it and the first update showed that it could have worked. What I will say, however, is that I think they failed to capitalize on what would have made it work. It really needed more consistent updates for the limited job, and the updates that it got needed to be of more significance than what we ended up getting. Getting 5 new missions for the carnival, or 1 new mission for the carnival, and not really getting to put a lot of that puzzle solving that made the original 25 missions so fun just kind of goes out the window. And when you can't properly incentivize the raids, you know, to group up with 8 people or 4 people, I mean, yeah, maybe I log into it and do the Masked Carnival every week for some allied seals, for some free teleports or whatever, and that has some longevity. It's also great for certain, like, low-level stuff. Like, if you want to just quickly blast through some low-level stuff, you know, it can be good for revisiting old stuff. But in terms of something I feel like I want to spend my time on, or something I can get excited about, that's where they really, really seem to have dropped the ball. And given that that's how the updates have felt, it feels worth saying at this point that I'd rather it have been a traditional job without all the fancy gimmickry, without all of the Blue Mage isms that they considered crucial to the Final Fantasy franchise, so much so that they designed this job the way that they did. I feel like it could have been serviced better at this point. And you never know. We are expecting a caster next expansion, right? And Blue Mage is from the New World, so maybe if we go there, we get Blue Mage as a full job. That's not an actual prediction, but I feel like some people are holding on to that hope, and at least I'm going to bring it up because I know it's something that people have said. But at this point, yeah, I mean, I'd rather they just kind of 180. I mean, you could honestly probably keep the limited job stuff and find a way to make it work both ways. I don't see why you couldn't do that technically, but regardless, the point that I'm trying to make is that I wouldn't be upset if they just abandoned this whole thing and then just said, you know what, we are going to make it a full job. Because I think at this point, I'd be more interested in seeing how Blue Mage looks when it is a traditional 14 job versus how it ended up being done at the end of it all. Now, like I said, I don't think that's actually going to happen, so what could they do to Blue Mage? What could actually make playing Blue Mage feel a little bit better? Well, like I said, it needs some of its own content. It needs something that feels like it's worth going out of your way for, and any given update that it has needs to have something of significance. Again, one Mass Carnival mission, as fun as that one mission might be, is quite frankly not enough. And if you're going to give it access to the raids, it needs to be properly incentivized, and that's something they've struggled with both the level 70 and 80 updates for Blue Mage. Like I said, it feels like it's phoned in. So what should they do is definitely increase the volume of Mass Carnival and probably open it up to more traditional styles of content that already exist. Plenty of people have asked if we could get Blue Mage Ultimate. Now, to be fair, I don't think that's a solution because Ultimate is already such a small number of people, and I think the better idea would be to introduce more stuff that is, I guess, accessible, I guess is the right way to put it. But it's something, you know, at the very least, it's just an idea that's commonly floated around. And I feel like opening up Blue Mage to more people is probably the route to go. And I think that adding more casual content to it is probably the best way to go about doing that. That being said, what could they do? Well, they've kind of already floated a few ideas by the community, which was really weird that they even brought them up because normally Yoshida doesn't like to do that because then people kind of latch onto it. So the fact that I'm even repeating it, I guess kind of proves that theory. One thing he mentioned was a battle royale mode where you go in as a Blue Mage and you have to run around the map and find your spells to then fight other people. People are kind of down for that idea. Like, I'm not a big battle royaler, but it does at least sound like an interesting exercise. It's at least something that gives Blue Mage its own special function and its own special place. Again, I would prefer less gimmicky PvP modes like that, but I mean, you can't deny the popularity of battle royales. You can't deny that at the very least it's a fun or funny idea. Would it really work out? I don't think so. I think we've seen, even with the updates to PvP, that just the overall interest in it in the Final Fantasy XIV community is not there to the point where I think you could support a battle royale style match. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe battle royale suddenly like just appeal to a bunch of people in our game too, and it ends up working out. So I wouldn't rule it out, but it's definitely not the first place I would go. But I would definitely do it. So if they put it in the game, I'm gonna do it. My personal wish list, the thing that I would love to see them do the most, is actually a Blue Mage deep dungeon. Now, again, that's a very specific thing, and again, I don't think is a solution to this. But again, it's more like if all of these things for Blue Mage were available, then more people would be doing it by virtue of these activities being available, I suppose is kind of the coalesced vision of all of this stuff. So what I imagine for Blue Mage Deep Dungeon is not even just could Blue Mage do Deep Dungeon. I would like a Blue Mage focused Deep Dungeon where, kind of similar to the Battle Royale mode, you start the Deep Dungeon floor 1, level 1, but only with water cannon. And you have to learn spells from the enemies inside, and then you can only carry a certain number of spells depending on how far up you've gone, what level you are, etc., etc. So as you level up, you know, through the early levels, you hit level 5, okay, I have a second spell slot. What do I want to learn? Well, what's available now? What could I, choose to forget later? And that could be a whole mechanic of it. Like if you have all of these spells, but there's a monster on a floor that you suddenly say, oh, that monster, I want that spell. And they could kind of mix it up so it's not so, I guess, predictable with the spells that will be available. Honestly, it would be fine even if it was, I suppose. But they could add, like, one of the cairns. They could add one for, like, the cairn of memory or cairn of forgetting, where you can choose to unlearn a spell. They can start adding debuffs for things where it's like you can't use certain blue magic spells, but it needs to be possible still. But, you know, they could just start messing around with stuff like that. A lot more unique, a lot more fresh, and then still do 1 to 4 blue mages for it, you know? It's just, there are options for things like that. Now, I want to say this, that is not simple. Palace of the Dead is probably programmed a very specific way on the back end to do something like this, would effectively be probably reprogramming it from the bottom up. It'd be like making a new deep dungeon from scratch, at least on the programming and code side. So I'm not saying that's easy, but they're ideas, and it's things like that that if they really want limited jobs to ever not be kind of a joke or a meme or to be taken seriously, they have to go down this route. But in my opinion, they shouldn't even bother. They should actually just go with a full job for Blue Mage and just say, we tried it. It wasn't the kind of popularity we wanted. It didn't have the support from the community. And there was a lot of voices saying, you know, give us Blue Mage as a full job. So we decided to do it. That would be a great surprise. But like I said, I don't think that's ever going to happen. I think they will accept that Blue Mage was unsuccessful and just make no more limited jobs. And if they do decide to ever put things like Beastmaster or Puppet Master in the game, which they had named as potential limited jobs, that they will just forego that idea and instead make them full jobs if they ever do them at all, which, you know, for Puppet Master especially, I'm not holding on to hope for that one. And it's not like this is the first time they've experimented with something new and it just hasn't worked. I mean, we've been through this so many times before. And even sometimes when things have worked, the feedback has led to things being changed and updated and kind of revamped for future ideas that are along the same way. You know, Eureka didn't have a resounding, feedback when it first came out, especially Pagos. And then, you know, we got Bojda, which addressed a lot of those things, but then has its own problems. And, you know, it's whenever they try something new, it's normally, oh man, here's a great idea. Here's some great things in it. But there's always like a few balls that are dropped. And those are the things that we end up kind of latching onto that can heavily impact the experience overall. But for Blue Mage, it felt like one giant kind of maybe at level 50, and then it just kind of tipped and tipped and tipped down the other way outside of those of us who went out of our way to do Alexander and get the mount at level 60. So it is what it is. You know, I wished it didn't go this way, but it has. So at this point, it's just a matter of if they care enough to do anything for it in the future, or if they want to just say, you know what, let's just move on, focus on the next thing. And that's there for the people who like it. That's there for the people who want the easy allied seals, who maybe want to do some old dungeons with it, mess around, do some whatever. It's there if people want it. And we'll just focus on the next new thing. Anyway, those are my most recent thoughts on Blue Mage. Let me know yours in the comment section of the video below. I'm sure it will be a very fun read. Anyway, yeah, like, favorite, subscribe, and share. And be sure to stay tuned. We're going to be having all the FanFest coverage. I will be live streaming at 10 a.m. Pacific when the keynote is going on, and keeping the stream going through all the panels throughout the day. We're just going to be having fun discussing, you know, maybe have a drink or two. I don't know. You know, we're just going to have a good time. It's FanFest. You know, we're here to have a good time, learn about the expansion, learn about patch 6.5 on day 2. We got all this good stuff, you know? But anyway, that's a wrap for me. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Until then, take care.